My name is Danny Fenton and I'm an aeromodeller and an engineer. Join me on a fascinating journey where I show you some of the techniques used in scale aeromodelling. I'm going to look at the wing fairing to wing root gap. As you've probably seen in one of the previous pictures, you'll see that there's a bit of a gap. It's only a couple of millimetres here and there, and then some places it's touchy. So what I want to do is make it nice and even and close if I can. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to cover the wing root with, this is aura cover, just some scrap aura cover, and I'm going to cover the wing root in that. Then I'll fit the wing to the fuselage, and then we'll put some filler into the gap. We'll force filler into the gap, and then hopefully get the wing back off again. And sand it all smooth. That's the plan. So I wasn't worried about the edges of this. I just want to make sure it's nice and smooth along the face. So I'm just going to fit a new number 11 blade, the old scalpel, and I got to try and find things like the wing tube. Now again, I don't need to worry too much about being accurate here. I'm just trying to protect the edges. So what else have we got in here? We should have a hole there for the wing bolt, and there's a hole for the servo wires. They're through there as well. The servo connector, in which case I've used a DB9. So I think that's it. The wing should now slide on and we should be able to close it up. Right, so we're going to refit the wing and then we'll get the filler mixed up. So I clagged some, I put the wing on, pulled it in tight, and I forced some filler into that joint there. I didn't show how I did it, but it's fairly straightforward stuff. The filler was onto a spreader or a spatula like this, and I literally wiped it that way and drove it as deep as I could into that. It probably has only gone in an eighth of an inch or something like 5 or 6 mils, but it's in there. You can't see much of the filler because when I did that, it scraped it off of this surface, which is fine, and has driven it all in there. So I managed to go right around this side, flip it over and do the other side as well. I've already sanded the other side, so I thought I'd just show you sanding this side. I don't think I got the mix of the filler quite right. I think there was enough hardener, it's just I didn't mix it thoroughly enough and that was because I was using the little dental pad, but with that big wide spreader to mix it. And what I should have done is use my usual paint knife, palette knife, to mix it, and then use the spreader to put it onto the wing. But anyway, it has gone off. It's just taken a little bit longer than usual. So. And that should do us. Now we'll flip it over and see if we can get the wing off. Right, so that's with it flipped over. You can see this side is already sanded. And now all we've got to hope is that this wing will pop off and this filler won't hold it on. So I'll go and get a spanner and I'll loosen the wing bolt. Okay, that's the wing slackened off. Let's see if I can push on the wing bolt and pop that section there away. And so far, no good. Let's hope I haven't glued the wing on. That would be unfortunate. I can see it just starting to crack through there, so I think we are getting somewhere. There we go. There, and that's the wing separated. Now you know when we push that back, it's going to be an absolutely dream of a joint. That's how you do it. So we'll get this wing off, and then we'll do the same thing on the other wing. On the full-size Chipmunk, this fairing on the fuselage actually overlaps the wing, and then there's a ridge on the wing. And in fact, the wing walk goes under the fairing. So this whole area we're going to have to look at later when it comes to building up this fairing edge. So as much as you've seen fairings and I've done fairings, I'm pretty fed up of fairings, we've still got a bit more to do. And I think probably what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little tiny section, maybe 6mm wide, of lithoplate all the way along the fuselage side of the fairing, and I'll let it overhang by about 1mm, and that's all, so that the wing will actually slide in and under the lithoplate, and then I'll build this area up just to smooth in the thickness of the lithoplate, which is a very thin material anyway. So we'll take the wing off. The other wing I've already covered in silver aura cover, and I'll fit that, and we'll splodge in some more filler and see if we can achieve the same results on the other side. So here we have the other wing on, the port wing, and you can see that there is a fairly substantial gap at this end, but it's fairly tight at the other end. So I've mixed up some filler and I'm going to just force that into the gap. I'll start at this end, which is where we need the most. I'm actually going to mix up another batch, just a bit, because the wing is actually a little bit higher than the fairing on this side, so I think I want to put another little skim on there, so I'm going to mix another batch. Okay, let's splodge some more on. and that'll do. So we'll let that dry, and then we'll flip it over and do the other side. So I've sanded the fairing. There was quite a bit more filler on this one. Well, not loads, but you know what I mean. Quite a lot more filler, so it took quite a bit of sanding. And there's a bit of a lump, not a lump, but there's a large area around the leading edge that I'm not sure about. So we'll have to see what happens when we try and crack it off, and hopefully the wing will come off. So here we go. That's slackening it off. And there the wing bolt is loose. That's a good sign. There we go. And it's come off. And all I'm doing is pushing on the wing bolt to push it out that way. And the real worry is that I'll actually push the nut off the end of the plywood bit. But if you remember when we built the wing, when I put the wing bolt nuts, captives, inside the root rib, they were really epoxied in solidly. So when I was pushing on this, there isn't really any danger of it happening, but it is still a concern. So there we go. I'll pop the wing right off, and that should be all we need to do on the fairings for the wings now. You can see here how the filler has been forced down between the wing root and the fuselage, and that has created that fillet. I've just been in and just softened the edge of it with some of this foam pad sanding pads, and that's great. Now I'm in two minds as to whether to try and fill this area in with a bit more filler, with maybe a mask running inside to make it look a little bit tidier or prettier. On the other hand, it's done, and you know, there we go, that's it. So I think I might just leave it, might just leave it. So there we go, that's how the wing fillets are sorted out. Today I'm going to take a break from fairings and make a small panel that is on the wings. And I'm not really sure what the panel is achieving, but there you go. It's on the model, so it's on the full size. So we'll put it on the model. And what it is, it's this aluminium strip that goes on the trailing edge of the wing, but in front of the flap, and it has a lip on it that goes around the trailing edge and underneath. And what you do is you hook it onto the aircraft, I believe, the lip on, which holds the back down, and then the front has loads of little screws on it. So what I'm going to show you is how I go about making this. So first of all, we need to mark out the litho plate. Unfortunately, litho plate comes in sort of, I don't know what it is, about 21-inch panels, and that's the biggest ones I've ever found. And what I need is a little bit more than that, so we're going to have to fudge the edge of it a little bit. So what I've done from my photographs and my drawings, I've worked out that the panel is 17 millimeters wide, and what I'm doing is I'm allowing 2 millimeters for the lip that goes around the back edge. So first of all, I'm going to mark it out very lightly with a scalpel, and I've just slightly scored where I want the fold to be. This is the thin litho plate, so you don't want to press too hard, because more than 2 bends and it'll actually break. The other line at 19 millimeters, I'm going to cut through a little bit more. I'm going to score it deeper, 2 or 3 passes. I may even actually cut it with the scalpel and the ruler, so that I can keep it all nice and flat. Now this is the tricky bit. What we have to do is we've got 2 millimeter wide section that we need to fold over, and that's going to be fun. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to position it. I'm going to use these 2 steel plates. Very useful, these steel plates. And I'm going to position them like that, and then I'm going to put this steel rule just over the edge slightly, a few mil, and then I'm going to position the litho plate on the edge of that. And then I'm going to very carefully line up my school marks. Now what I've done is I've not used a pencil to create these lines. I've used the scalpel, and the tip of the scalpel scores a line that is really, really sharp and accurate, so you really have got to be accurate. I also found my bit of leather that I was looking for the other day. Funnily enough, it was exactly where it should have been, but I didn't find it. Anyway, I'm going to use the leather to protect my fingertips as I fold this over that line. And of course it's moved. Now if I was clever, what I possibly should have done was taped this to the ruler, but I didn't. But as it's scored, it's actually folding over fine. And as you can see, I've got it to a more or less 90-degree fold. So we now flip the ruler over the other side and put it on top of the litho plate with the fold up against the edge of it. We then use the leather again to just make sure that the litho is at 90 degrees and up against the edge of the ruler. And now we have our litho plate with a 90-degree lip on it. Now that's a 2mm lip. So what I'm going to do, and I would argue that 2mm is about as fine a lip as you'll be able to put on, fine a fold that you'll be able to put in it accurately. The thickness of this ruler is about 1.5mm thick, 1.6mm. So now what I do is I take a sanding block, not that sanding block, that sanding block, and what I do is I hold it at a slight angle and I actually sand the litho plate down onto the ruler. So I'm just sanding the litho flush with the ruler. And what this will do is give us an edge that is only 1.5mm rather than the 2mm. I don't want the edge to be too big. And there we have the strip with a 1.5mm lip, all nicely sanded. And that lip is a constant thickness all the way along. Now we'll take that over to the wing and see how that fits along the trailing edge. So that goes on there like that. And it fits just perfectly. Now at this end, I've got about a 10mm gap that I need to fill. And what I'll probably do is just use another piece of litho plate and butt it onto the end of that, or even take another piece and just fold another make another short section of this and just butt it on the end there. And then where the two join together, I'll try and hold it as close together as I can. And if it doesn't perfectly align, I'll just fill the gap with a little bit of filler and just smooth it all out. And it should look fine. This gets painted. So anything like that is hidden. What I do need to do is have a quick look at this section here, because I think there's a tiny little notch there. So I'm going to do that now before I go any further. This is a good idea if you start getting your drawings and your documentation together and you want to quickly access stuff. Just create yourself a folder, and for things like 3 views, just put a hole punch along one end and you can open them out and find them. What I'm looking for is the top 3 view. So you can see just here there's a little notch out of the strip. So I need to just replicate that. What I'm also noticing on this 3 view, possibly, is that it tapers slightly to the tip. It's narrower there than it is there, and I didn't do that on the first one, and probably I should have done. So now I'm wondering whether I should on this one. I'll go and have a think. I decided it has to be done right, so that other wing I'm going to have to take this panel back off again. That should be fun. But anyway, what I've done is I've reduced this end to 12mm, and this end is the 17mm. I actually put it on the edge of the cutting mat so that the lip hung over the edge, and then I ran the scalpel blade along it and cut it, which I was amazed it did, but it did. So that's now correct, and it looks much better actually. So so I will sort it, I will do that on the other side. So this end, despite having fitted all those rivets, so this end also has the little notch cut out in the corner as well, as per the full size. So what I'm going to do to hold this on, and somebody put a comment on the last video where they suggested that using CA to glue an aluminium panel to a brass panel was going to give me problems in the heat, whereas the aluminium expanded and contracted at a different rate and it would break the glue joint. Well, I've not found that issue. I attach lithoplate to many of my models and have done for many years with CA, and it's not been an issue. It's not come off. But this is a larger, flatter area, so I am mildly concerned, and because it's up against the fabric covering rather than on a glass fibre fuselage. So what I did on the other wing, and I don't know whether it'll work, whether it'll be consistent, but what I've used is double-sided carpet tape, and it's really thin but really powerful tape. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put some double-sided tape on the inside of that, and then we'll stick it onto that using the double-sided tape. Obviously you've got to get it right, because you only get one shot with the tape. So fingers crossed we get it right. Then I'll drill all the holes and fit the little tiny rivets all the way along to look like screws. So I'm not sure if this is going to work. What I've done is I folded the double-sided tape protective covering back a little bit, and then I've put one end on while keeping the other end straight. So what I'm going to try and do is hold that up against the trailing edge and peel this out and see if it will remain stuck. Might be an easier way to keep it all aligned. It does appear to be working. Famous last words. And there we have it. It's double-sided down onto the trailing edge of the wing. Now the reason I didn't want that lip to be more than the 1.5mm that it is because the flap is quite tight up against the shroud. It's not touching it, but it's close. So that 1.5mm means it's still clear. So that's very nice. So now what we need to do is we need to mark off on this. We have to draw a line to indicate where the screws are going to be, and then we have to mark on that line the screw increments. And I know that we have to have 5 screws between each rib. So I know these have to be 12mm apart. I positioned the screws 3mm back from the leading edge. So at this end, I'll make it 3mm back. But at this end, I'm only going to make it 2mm back. Then we mark off in 12mm increments. The next step is to drill a small hole on every one of these marks, and the hole just needs to go through the litho plate and into the trailing edge very slightly, only 2 or 3mm if that. Now when you drill these holes, put quite a bit of pressure on initially when you're just pressing against the lith, because what that does is gives a little bit of a dimple or a depression where the screw is going to go, and it looks as if the screw is actually pulling the panel down onto the wing a little bit, which is how the full size looks. You can see that this scale error modelling malarkey is actually quite a lot of work. And if somebody had said to you building model aeroplanes would involve you drilling 50 holes in a straight line all the way along the trailing edge just to add some dummy rivets, you'd probably say, no, I'm not into that. But as scale error modelers, adding all this detail is a huge part of the satisfaction. And building the airframe is literally just to get us to this point. Right, I'm not going to show you me drilling 50 holes along the trailing edge of this wing, so I'll do the rest of that and we'll come back to it when we start putting the rivets in. The next step is incredibly fiddly. You see here I've got a little tray and it's actually full of the ends of rivets. And what they are the this is how they arrive from Vario, and you can see it's a moulding with rivets, and you just cut them off and into a tray, whatever length you want. Some of these are quite short, some are a bit longer. The hole in the trailing edge is not very deep, so the short ones are probably all I need, but some of them got a bit longer just because I was a little bit inaccurate cutting them out. Anyway, so what we have to do now, yeah, you've got it. You've got to pick each one of these up with the tweezers. Just picking them up is hard enough. And then you've got to get them positioned in the tweezers just right. And then you've literally got to position them over the hole and push them in, just like that. Now there's another 36, I think, to do. See how easy that is? Not going to take long, is it? It says famous last words. Try a shorter one. And these are to simulate the screws that are used to hold this strip down. So I'll keep adding these. I won't make you suffer watching me struggle. See, doesn't always go to plan. And you can bet some of these are going to ping off into the distance, never to be seen again. Okay, I'll keep doing these and then we'll come back to it when they're all done. So that's all of those placed in the holes, and that's only taken 20 minutes. It's not so bad. So now what we have to do is we have to set these so that they actually are glued in. So all I tend to use is a bit of kitchen towel or something like that, and I just put a little tiny, as small a drop as I can, onto the head of the rivet. And if you're lucky, you can see it wick in. Now the one at this end, I'm particularly keen on making sure we get a good bit of glue in there, going right down through, and I made sure these last ones are quite long as well. And there we go. That hopefully will all stay put. These sponge pads have been absolutely brilliant, and I got them years ago from Halfords, and they used to do a set of assorted grades, and they are absolutely brilliant. They're sort of rubber foam backed, but Halfords don't sell them anymore, and nobody sells them anymore, and I've been searching everywhere for a replacement, and I think finally I found some, and they should be arriving today. So I'll show you what they're like when they arrive and give you a link as to where they're from. But these are brilliant, but as you can see, then they're well past their best. Well, today the Goldflex soft foam pads, sanding pads, arrived, and I had hoped they were going to be a replacement for these rubber backed ones, which is quite a dense foam, and the sanding surface is not paper, it's actually embedded into the rubber, and you can stretch it and it's still a sandy surface, and they are brilliant. And I cannot find them anywhere. So if you know anybody that is selling these, let me know, because these are not the same. What these are, effectively, is a thin layer of foam, which is fine, but it's a bit too thin and too soft. And the surface is actually just paper that's been glued to the foam. So although if you fold it, you're going to get well, it's not going to flex to the contour the way that does. You know, if I put my thumb through that, you can see you could make a ball in the middle of that, and it's still a sanding surface. Whereas this is paper. If I do that, it just creases and wrinkles. It's a flat sheet of paper. And the whole point of this is that this thing shapes to the contours that you're trying to sand. So I'm still on the lookout for these. Halfords, why did you stop selling it? Anyway, there you go. If you know of it, let me know. If you've enjoyed the video, please click like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.